Are you ready to live the life you were made for? I'm Lisa Pulliam, founder of More to Be and host of this podcast and seasoned life coach, and I'm passionate about helping you experience wholehearted breakthrough and authentic life transformation. Through exploring timeless biblical principles combined with the best mental health coaching practices, I'll help you explore emotional, spiritual, and relational well-being so that you can uncover a life of deep purpose and lasting impact. That is the More to Be life you were made for, a life aligned with God's best. The More to Be podcast is supported by our Patreon podcast community. You can become a valuable member and get access to exclusive downloadable resources, courses, and coaching at patreon.com/moretobee. On this episode of the More to Be podcast, I am joined by Christina Ray Stanton. She worked as a licensed New York City tour guide and has been featured in print and on TV many times in her 23-year career. She is the short-term missions director for Redeemer Presbyterian Church and founder of the non-for-profit organization Loving All Nations, which helps the world's poor. She and her husband, Brian, still live within blocks of the World Trade Center. And that is a significant part of her story and the reason I have her on our podcast today. She has written Out of the Shadow of 9/11, an inspiring tale of escape and transformation. Welcome to the podcast, Christina.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
I'm so glad. And we are recording this on an August morning. The sun and the clouds sort of reminds me of 9/11. I remember it being a really, really bright and beautiful day, right?
Beautiful.
And for me, 9/11 is significant because I am a fellow New Yorker, transplant in Pennsylvania. And I remember the morning of 9/11, I was pregnant with my second daughter, and I had just met up with a pack of about 6 other friends. Half of them were also pregnant. We had gone on this beautiful walk in the neighborhood, came back, and I went to plop down my firstborn, Leah, in front of like PBS so I could go take a shower. And when I went to turn on the TV, there was the news on every channel of the attack on the first tower. At that point, it had been the first tower. Ah, I had goosebumps already. It's a hard memory.
Yes.
And we went into chaos, trying to get on the phone, calling my husband who was on campus at the school we were working at, what's going on, and this urgency to try to get off Long Island because we felt so trapped. So the wake after 9/11 was a painful time for us. I remember driving Leah to preschool, and on the way we passed a fire station, and often there would be fire trucks with the American flag hung between the 2 ladders, symbolizing another funeral. Abby's classmates, lost parents who were emergency workers who they never knew their father because they were babies when they were born before or after 9/11, but their dads were gone for their whole life. And we know marriages that ended because of 9/11, that the trauma became paralyzing. We know people impacted in tremendous ways, but I have never read a story like yours. I have never been able to see what it was like to be on the ground, not in the tower.
Right.
And so what I would love is for you to share as much of your story as you want to. I mean, for the next half hour, 45 minutes, I think it's important for people to understand what you went through and how it changed you and what God's faithfulness looked like for you at the various stages that you walked through this experience.
Right. I appreciate you pointing that out, that you had not read anything that had my particular angle on 9/11. And I have noticed that a lot of people think that the destruction was contained to, say, the Twin Towers or the 16-acre World Trade Center site. But there
Right.
were thousands of others that were affected. There was 25,000 people who lived right along the periphery
Yeah.
of the World Trade Center site. There were 50,000 students, all the way from,
Mm,
from nursery to college in the area. and
Mm,
employees, so 400,000 employees. So the range of devastation and who it affected was just vast. But
yeah.
in our account, we were residents. We lived 6 blocks away from the Twin Towers, and wild, we had just moved there. We had
Yeah.
actually moved. We're newlyweds, and we
Wow.
moved to 21 West, building 6 blocks away, and just July the 7th. So we'd only been there a few
Mm,
months.
mm.
And we had gotten this wonderful apartment on the 24th floor. And it had this incredible terrace. And if you know, being
Yeah.
from New York, that outdoor space is kind of at a premium.
Yes.
New York City is something that I think a lot of other towns take for granted. There's not a lot of outdoor spaces that people can call their own in New York City. And so we were so excited to get that little 300 square foot terrace that actually faced the Twin Towers. And that was the selling point
Wow.
of getting this apartment, was the fact that it framed literally a panoramic view of the World
Mm.
Trade Center site and the Twin Towers. It's what excited me, because I always loved that complex.
Yeah, yeah.
And that morning, I was asleep, my husband was awake, and the impact of the first plane hitting the North Tower actually shook our building.
Mm.
And so my husband kind of glanced out from the terrace, saw smoke, knew something bad had just happened. He came and shook me awake, and we both ran out into the terrace and
Mm.
watched the flames come out of either side of the North Tower. It was just like watching this adventure movie, just a bad,
Good one.
crazy scene.
Yeah.
And from the 24th floor, we didn't normally hear street noise. That was far enough away that, but at that point, there were so many collective screaming and police sirens and ambulance sirens that it just was shocking to the senses in every single way. And all of a sudden, right over my right hand shoulder, the second plane came and went over our heads, went right in front of us, turned and went into the building. And the
Mm.
next thing I remember, I was lying on the floor inside our apartment on our living room. And we
Yeah.
believed that the shock waves had blown us back into the apartment. And the good news about that on our end was that the fact that our very large French doors had been open to the terrace. And so we didn't
Wow.
hit anything on our our journey back into our apartment. But I
Yeah.
woke up with my dog, our 40-pound dog, jumping on my torso, scared to death. I remember my husband yelling, "Do you want your shoes?" I said, "No, let's get out of here." We ran down the 24 flights of the interior stairwell. And when I got outside, I had collected myself a little bit to realize I am not wearing shoes, and I'm still in my pajamas.
Yeah.
And when my husband made it down with our dog, we tried to get back into the building. They said no, evacuation only. And when you're in danger, your inner alarm is just clanging and trying to get you to go
Yeah.
as far away from the danger as possible, whatever danger that might be. Well, for us, the farthest away we could get is Battery Park, which is a 25-acre park at the very tip of Manhattan. And we felt safe there. We walked onto the park and felt safe. However, to give some context, if you don't have
Mm.
a map in front of you, Manhattan's a very small island. It ends in this park, and that park is surrounded on three sides by the East River and the New York Harbor
Yeah.
and the Hudson River. So, except for the northern boundary, we're surrounded by water. So when the Twin Towers came down, we weren't safe at all. We'd run out
Mm.
of land in which to
Yeah.
run. We were
Yeah.
covered with the dust and debris. We were surrounded by the smoke because the World Trade Center coming down, all the buildings that fell produced a lot of flames and smoke, which ended up blowing south and blowing towards us and surrounded us. So it was just this crazy scene where there were thousands of us running around trying to find a place to breathe, trying to find. I watched people pitch themselves into the New York Harbor, try to swim to like the Governor's Island and
Yeah.
nearby land, which is
Yeah.
actually not so nearby.
No,
And
no. Yeah.
at one point, we stopped and said goodbye to each other, thinking that this is the end. I mean, I was
I know.
31, my husband was 35. We were newlyweds. We'd only lived in that apartment for a couple of months.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, this is it. This
This
is
is
the
over.
end. This is the end of the road. And I
And
hadn't done
a-
anything.
as you
My life.
yeah, nothing. As I was reading, you do a remarkable job in your storytelling of holding the tension. I mean, just like I had a tight chest and like that thing in your throat of like she's got no bra on. She's in her
Right?
90s. Like,
Right.
she has no shoes on. How far is she going to run? And then you described how there were sneakers and shoes all over the place. And I'm thinking, stop, pick up a pair of sneakers and put them on. And it was chapters before you stopped and thought, why didn't I pick up a pair of sneakers?
Oh, I thought quite a few things in the aftermath. Why didn't I
Yeah,
do this? Why didn't I do that? And as it
yeah.
turns out, there was a route out of the park. We could have hugged the Hudson River coastline and walked our way out.
Oh,
But when our cell phones weren't working, all the cell service was down.
yeah,
When you can't even see a route
yeah.
clear, a route out, and we have a 40-pound dog, we can't try to swim to Governor's Island.
No,
There was a lot of options that we thought weren't available at the time, and thousands of others felt the same way. There was a lot
right.
of people saying goodbye, and I just remember looking around thinking, I'm just so glad that I have my husband and my
Yeah,
dog with me, because all of these people are without their loved ones. They don't
yeah,
have a cell phone. They can't even say goodbye. They're enduring all of this chaos and horror alone. And
yeah.
I remember being thankful for my new husband, that I had met him and married him before I died, and that he was with me when we
Mm,
passed. But oh yeah, it was a crazy scene. And I fortunately, in a way, I have a very good memory, and I
yeah,
remember pretty much a play by play of what happened that day. And I tried, thank you for saying that, because I did try my best to get it down on pen and paper,
yeah.
because I hadn't seen an account like ours of thousands of us trapped down
No.
there in the park. And then if you read on, you read
Yeah.
that
Oh, yeah.
the Coast Guard
Yeah. Share
announced
that.
to
Share
us. To
that. Share that.
tell you the truth, we didn't know this happened until years later, because it was definitely
Wow.
an underreported situation. But
Yeah.
the Coast Guard did know that there were thousands of us who felt trapped down there in the park, and who needed to get off the island before we got even more hurt, and people went if more people tried to swim who
Yeah.
couldn't
Yeah. Yeah.
swim
Yeah.
off the
Swim.
island. So they issued a CB radio call saying, hey, any boat owners, boat operators in the area, go on to Battery Park, pick people up, move them off the island. Don't care where you put them, but just move them to safety, because they're in jeopardy and their lives are endangered right now. And all of these different boat operators did actually respond to that call. It was New York waterways, like ferry boats and party boats and tugboats, just every kind of. I've actually heard that canoes came over, that people
Wow.
canoes. I've never read or I've never actually seen anybody interviewed who commandeered a canoe, but it was this miracle, and 500,000 of us were rescued off the island of Manhattan and taken to safety that day. And
Right.
I have seen more reports out in this 20-year anniversary than I have previously. So I do hope people understand and get to hear about that wonderful, heartwarming story, because these were all volunteers who did that.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
were actually taken off and taken over to New Jersey, to an area we weren't familiar with,
Hmm.
and that's a whole other side of the story. But to fast forward, we didn't get back into our apartment. I think it was 12 days, 13 days that we didn't get back,
Yeah.
and that was another kind of revelation for me. We couch surfed. We had all kind of different experiences of
Hmm.
trying to house ourselves, and when we were homeless, essentially,
Yeah.
because we weren't allowed back into our apartment because we lived so close to the attack zone. And that was a whole other spate of issues and situations that I just wanted people to know. Again, not to devalue by any means of the people who are directly impacted in the Twin Towers and in the plains. It's just for people to understand, have a better understanding
Yeah.
of that day,
Yeah.
and to maybe complete more of their information of who it affected, and all the different kind of ripple effects that
Yeah.
happen from
Yeah.
those planes going into those towers.
Yeah.
So
Well, and there was a scene that you described that probably will be one of those that's impacted me, will impact me for the rest of my life when I hear the term refugee.
yeah,
You know, because you described getting off the boat and going to this person who you thought was going to be able to help you, and you used the word without thinking, refugee, but that very much described you were shoeless, you were braless, You were covered in yellow gunk that was burning your eyes and your skin. You had no purse. You had no phone. Your husband forgot his phone, had his wallet with just some cash and some credit cards.
Thank goodness for that.
Thank goodness for that. I mean, you had socks on your feet from his shoes, like that he gave you. Like you had nothing. And then you're walking with the crowd that you're with and end up at a BJ's and then met with resistance that they wouldn't let the dog in with you. I was so mad. All of my New York anger. I was like, let the freaking woman into the store. Can't you see she needs something? Like I was so mad. And so I mean, these are parts of what happens to any human being in the face of a traumatic experience when they're dehomed.
Right, right, right. And I basically just put forth what happened to us that day. I
Yes,
do like to frame that we did receive help as well.
you
That
did.
at one point, en route to BJ's,
Yes,
I
yes,
needed
right,
to use
right.
the bathroom. I need to use the
I
bathroom.
remember that. Yeah.
There wasn't, I don't know what was going on, but we didn't run into any stores that were open. I don't know if they hadn't opened yet for the day, if they'd been abandoned, if the people had owners had locked their doors. I could not find a place to use the restroom, and some woman
Yes.
saw us, asked if we needed anything. I said, I need a bathroom, and I'm literally dripping with dust
Yeah.
and debris,
Yeah.
literally absolutely filthy. She brought us into her lovely apartment, and we went to the restroom there. And it was all the mix of good, bad,
Yeah.
surprise. And I do remember going through BJ's, and back then
Yeah.
there's a place where they sold hot dogs where people were sitting
Yeah.
down and eating. I just remember everybody watching me.
Right.
I walked through
Right.
the store to find the restroom and to wash my face. And I remember looking at them thinking, anybody want to offer a hot dog?
I know.
Hungry. But here's the thing though. My intention in writing these things is not to down anybody for not offering to help. It's not, I mean, who knows if honestly, if I'd have been in their shoes, would I have thought, do you want a hot dog? It's
Yeah.
just, it's life. It's how we respond. And,
Yeah.
if anything, how a takeaway from
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
for me
And
was definitely, I found it so discombobulating to be without a home for a couple of weeks. It's something I'd never experienced and I'd read about. And,
yeah.
um, my husband and I founded a nonprofit that in part helps refugees. And
Oh, okay.
it's because I harken back to that time after 9/11 when when we were undergoing something that all these trials and tests that we had never faced before.
Right.
And they really seared into my heart and my
Yeah.
brain. And I wanted to do something proactively afterwards. And that's something that came out of that experience. So
That's
again,
awesome.
trying not to be negative, and in our case, I'm very glad that I'd
Yeah.
had that experience. So in a very small way, I could relate to somebody who has housing issues, and believe me, very small, because there are people
Yeah.
who struggle with housing. And but I just remember, even for 2 weeks, that was
Yeah.
not having your own bed to sleep in, your clothes, your toiletries, having to go to Salvation Army. Thank goodness for them.
Yeah.
And get daily collections of toiletries and all the things that you'd need.
Yeah.
It was definitely eye opening for me.
It was humbling. I remember you said in the book you you'd never been on that side of the recipient of the volunteer work. You'd always been the volunteer.
And how that did that, how I did kind of like a mental obstacles of feeling prideful
Yeah.
and thinking, wow, I always give to these type of organizations, and now I need them. Isn't there somebody who needs it more than me?
Hmm.
And again, part of the pride of, well, I'm in control. I don't need this. I can go out and do this and that. And and there are times when unfortunately, we all struggle in life, that we do need to ask
We
help
do
from
need help.
others. And again, what a humbling experience that is, but also a blessing too, because I look back and I don't think of my pride and how I was humbled. I am just so thankful.
Yeah.
And I have actually written the Salvation Army and told them my story and thanked them for it, because I
Yeah.
owe a lot of thanks afterwards. And so
Yeah.
but it's all part and parcel of kind of what made me me after
Yeah,
9/11. Because after 9/11, I did a lot of soul searching for years and a
sure.
lot of learning, a lot of growing, and that includes my relationship with Jesus. And
Yeah.
all of that came out of that experience. And so, of course, I would never wish a 9/11 on anyone. And but the fact remains is, after we all go through traumatic experiences, we have a sink or swim kind of option
Hmm.
ahead of us. Or how do we grow? What did we learn? What can we do to improve? What can we do with that experience? And I'd like to think that was so transformative, that
Hmm.
um, that really did put me in a different place. And certainly I'm very happy that it brought me to a closer relationship with Jesus.
Yeah. And it was interesting as I was reading along and wondering, there were key times where you prayed, there were key times where you're like, oh Lord, if not you, then what, was kind of
Right,
the
right, 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 right.
help me. And you did see that woman with the bathroom as a provision, and there were
Thank you.
other,
Right.
yeah,
That was God's provision.
God's
When I
provision.
when Brian and I said goodbye to each other at the fort, while we were surrounded by the smoke and covered with the dust and debris, I remember thanking God for bringing Brian us to this point that we were together.
Yeah.
But I also said, Lord, save me. I don't want to
Hmm.
die. I'm 31. I haven't. I have this whole life that I had planned out, and he did rescue me in the form of that boat evacuation. So God did answer my prayers,
Mm.
and I'm eternally grateful for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and in the aftermath, I did, kind of wrestle with my relationship with God, because it was turned up on its ear, that I just really thought my whole life, I have this, I've got it going. I talk
Mm.
about how a friend of mine cross stitched something for me that I had brought up to New York, and it said, whatever I am to be is simply up to me. And
Oh,
I'd always said it's all on my own strength, it's all on my own power, it's all of my own initiative and how hard I work, and the Lord helps those who helps themselves. I was all into that. And
hmm,
then, afterwards I was like, wow, I'm realizing how little I am in control,
yeah.
how there are all these circumstances that are outside of my understanding and my control. And what do I do with that? I mean,
Hmm.
all of my work and slaving, or just striving really to get
Hmm.
quote unquote ahead in life. What was all that doing me when I'm in Battery Park, surrounded by people who are fearing for their lives and running for their lives? Like, what did my Broadway dreams do for me at
Yeah.
that moment in time? And that was a
Yeah.
real realization for me.
Yeah. It's a wake up call. And I know I have such a heart for Redeemer Presbyterian Church. So, and because, so Tim Keller, pastor of Redeemer, his boys went to the boarding school that we worked at on Long Island.
Oh, Stony Brook.
Yes, Stony Brook. So, no, all of his boys, they all had a significant impact in some way in our lives and their lives. And so, when I saw that in your story, like I felt the walk you took into, the Hunter College campus,
Right.
and this encounter with a community that gave you hope.
Right, 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 right. And that's something that I think a lot about, is that there is comfort and there is hope and there is support within the Christian community. And that's what I found in the aftermath. And not that Christians are perfect, not
Mm-mm.
that
No,
not that
ma'am.
we're all a pile of broken people, which is why we gather together, worship together, hold each other accountable, support each other, because we're all during this journey trying to be Christ-like, and we're all completely broken people.
Yeah.
But when I got there, I just was I felt so supported, and I felt so accepted and loved. And I just really thought, gosh, there's something to this, and I want this. This is
Hmm.
what I want. And again, that it wasn't just a pie in the sky. I didn't have this cliched um, I accept Jesus and I am all this and all that. And I'm this, it was a journey for me. Now, my husband, I
Hmm.
have to say, was hook, line, and sinker. I want Jesus in my life. I'm ready to turn everything over to him. For me, I was like, well, what about that penthouse I've been wanting for so long? What about them? I was going to be one of those lady who lunches, and
Yeah.
I mean, I had a lot of had a lot of things that a lot of carrots and on a stick in front of me that I had wanted for so long, and a lot of those had to die a death along the journey. But but it was a journey, and that I began walking with Jesus, who overturned all those desires and gave me new desires and a new joy. I mean, certainly, I know all of these years down the road, I became yet the director of missions at Redeemer, and in part, I was helping people like they were helping me in the aftermath. I
Mhm.
was providing support and care and love and a listening ear and literally like aid and assistance that it was shown me in the aftermath. And I understand, people come in, they're struggling, they're upended, they're uprooted. And again, in a little sense, because of 9/11, I know what that felt like. And my goal in missions and in the nonprofit that we own is, is to provide
Mhm.
what I was provided in the aftermath, because I know that's a point when people need it, when they're at
Yeah.
the end of their rope. And we were at the end of our rope. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me, I've got my Bible open in front of me. I wonder if I could find it fast enough. Um, it makes me think of that passage from Second Corinthians about the God of all comfort, or is it first? I think it might be First Corinthians, um, where the Lord, and I really want to read it as it's written.
And that is the verse that says, I mean, you're given a gift. You can now give a gift to others in the form of helping them through their experiences and providing help. So suffering can lead to basically you being able to receive a gift that you can then send
Yeah.
on to others who are going through their own dark times.
Right, which, and I found it. I'm going to read it and then, think about how it's so relevant to the suffering for people today. So it's actually Second Corinthians chapter 1, verse 3. All praise to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. God is our merciful Father and the source of all comfort. He comforts us in all of our troubles so that we can comfort others. When they are troubled, we will be able to give to them the same comfort God has given us. For the more we suffer for Christ, the more God will shower us with his comfort through Christ. Even when we are weighed down with troubles, it's for your comfort and salvation. For when we ourselves are comforted, we will certainly comfort you. Then you can patiently endure the same things we suffer. We are confident that as you share in our sufferings, you will also share in the comfort God gives us.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
totally your
So,
story.
and it's really what I wanted to do. And to round out the story a little bit, for after we did get to our apartment, it's not that was the end of our issues.
No, actually,
We
describe your apartment.
Oh,
You,
yes. It was, well, we had left our terrace doors open, and the winds had been very strong that day and the days after. That it turns out our apartment became pretty much a rubbish bin. It
Mhm.
collected all kind of things that flew through the air, including papers that were carried out of the Twin Towers, meaning by the wind. So
Yeah.
I remember I found this massively tall what I call paper sculpture. And it
Mhm.
was basically congealed scraps of paper that had blown in from the World Trade Center. And I
Mhm.
remember going through every single scrap and thinking, if there's anything here, from an ID to a personal note, I will try to find the owner and
Mhm.
discern the owner and find out who the family is and send it to the family. And I have actually kept some of those papers, and I still have them to this day.
Yeah.
But I didn't find anything personal. It seemed like it was a lot of ledgers, a lot of accounting book
Sure.
items, nothing of a personal nature, but it was a complete wreck. And then you saw from my book that my dog got sick right away because we'd caught him licking his fur of
Yeah.
the dust and debris, as animals do when they're dirty.
Yeah.
And it turns out that debris contained ground up glass, which shredded his inside. So he clung to life for weeks. My husband graduated from Clemson University, and he was really into his fraternity, ATO. And one of his ATO brothers died in the North Tower, and he was just beside himself. And so it just went on and on.
Yeah.
And we started having health issues kind of right away, just not feeling well. of course, now we realize that dust and debris was
Yeah.
toxic and poisonous, and so again, it just seemed like we couldn't catch a break. And
Yeah.
again, that seems I have to do a disclaimer that I am very aware that we didn't have a family member die, and not to belittle any of those
Yeah.
families who had to deal with that terrible, horrible, having their loved ones' life cut short in such a horrible way. It's just again another way of people understanding that for several of us, it just who kind of picked up the pieces or were ripple
Yeah.
effects. They were tough ripple effects, you know.
Right. Right.
So,
Right.
and to this day, I would definitely say that 9/11 is the backdrop of our lives, and
Uh-huh.
it doesn't, let's say, we don't think about it necessarily every single day, but going through an experience like that did put us on another road that we're still down, that all of our roads directly lead to 9/11.
Yeah.
All of
Yeah.
our life choices, our what we do for a living,
Yeah.
pretty much all of our life decisions had their roots, to this day,
Yeah.
and what we experienced in 9/11. I mean, to this day, I mean, my husband completely changed careers. He still works for Redeemer Presbyterian Church,
Yeah.
and again, just everything in our lives
Yeah.
is deeply rooted in 9/11.
Yeah. So I'm in graduate school getting my degree in counseling with a
Mm.
trauma focus, and I do
Oh,
work as a equine assisted coach.
I saw
Uh,
that. Yes.
yeah, with trauma focus. So of course, my brain, as I'm reading your story, I'm thinking about how the trauma has been remembered by your body and
Right.
your mind and your heart, and that you're probably on a continual healing journey as a result of that. Like, would you feel comfortable sharing a little bit more about how that trauma has impacted you emotionally?
Yes, for sure. I mean, in big and small ways. I would say smaller ways are a fear of flying, which I never had any problem with before 9/11. And in
Okay.
fact, I am flying on 9/11 this year to speak at a church in Indianapolis on the 12th. 9/11 this year
Yeah.
is on a Saturday. So I'll be
Yeah.
speaking at a church on Sunday. And I was thinking in terms of I know that this could cause a lot of anxiety, and I have to not let it, because and I'm not really, because I'm signed up for the flight, because it's more important for me to share my testimony, and that's how I need to get there is in the flight than it is my fear of flying. So I just I know that I'm going to be doing lots of praying and giving it to God, but if I had given in to, for instance, that anxiety with flying, I would have never done mission trips. I flew all over the world with mission trips, which has been one of
Yeah.
the joys of my life. I
Yeah.
love mission trips. I love missions. And I would never sacrifice going over and seeing the lovely friends I'd made in South Africa and Madagascar because of a fear of flying. I'm just not called to do that. And I'm not called. And it's just another obstacle and hurdle to overcome. And yeah, there are some health issues. I have to say though, um, it's that is one area in which I feel particularly blessed, and blessed in the sense that because that dust and debris was so toxic and so poisonous, they've actually linked about 70 different cancers to people who inhaled that dust and debris. And it has killed people, affected their health. That I feel very fortunate that I'm 51 and still here, with as much as it was a part of our lives, because we did live in our apartment for 2 years afterwards, and that we were inhaling that dust for all of those years. Now, we did get COVID in the early days, March 2020, which I linked directly to our compromised immune system related to 9/11. And I was hospitalized twice and told I had a 50% chance of dying from it, which again, I link directly to 9/11, another way that 9/11 directly affects me 20 years later to this day. And I did survive. And And it was definitely a close call. But yet again, what that fills me with is gratitude, because I'm still here, still able to share my testimony, still able to worship God, and just I'm grateful for every day I'm on this earth, because others did not get that amount of time. So I just feel like every day I have left is days that God has given me. So, but yeah, so I remember when I did get COVID, there was a time when I realized, wow, that's here it shows up all these years later. But again, just glad to be here.
Yeah, and that comes through your book. You are much more gracious than I am, and it is a good example for me. And so,
It's
uh,
easy for me to say on the flip side. I
yeah,
have to wrestle with it just like everybody. And
yeah,
I have a default. We all do. My
yeah,
default is anger. I can get angry, and I remember feeling angry in different periods, and then it's almost like it just has to be worked through, and it has to be dealt with, and I look to God. And we all have defaults of anger or sorrow, or feeling victimized, and all these things, and we just have to give it to the cross. That's just it's our road to hoe. And I mean, do I like admitting that I can be an angry person? No, but I do like to think that the anger spurts are few far between, and they die down quickly. And part of it is just knowing that it's there, and knowing that that's where I go to. It's an easy emotion, right?
right, right. Well, it's my
Overwhelmed.
default too.
You can do all of these things and feel all these things. Mine is anger. That's the
Yeah,
easiest. That's the
yeah,
quickest. That's the lowest hanging fruit. But and God God knows
yeah.
that I don't like that, and He's still dealing with me.
Right, right. There was something else that emerged for me as I was reading your book that I thought would be helpful for our listeners. Um, it was very interesting to hear your play-by-play of how you were processing it when you were staying at your friend's house and staying in the other apartment. You would walk. You walked for miles in the 2 weeks before you went back to your apartment, and you couldn't contain the energy and the anxiety probably would be the definition of it. Brian slept and slept and
He's
slept and
barely
slept.
awake. Yes.
And when you came to the moment, you had a conversation with your mom and you came to this moment of like reaching out to the counselor that you had done, met with for premarital counseling. And I thought, oh, praise Jesus, because you needed help at that point and I could see it. And Brian needed help as well. And what I thought was really a beautiful but painful picture was how our bodies respond to trauma and stress and cope in different ways, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Brian went into the shutdown mode
Mhm.
and you went into movement. And it was what was so fascinating to me was this. So I talk about this all the time on the podcast about how God made our brains and the brain stem as being the lower region where we go into fight, flight, freeze, faint, or fawn under the face of harm or threat. The next layer up is diencephalon, which is sensory motor and movement. And then the next layer up is limbic, which is this, your emotions, what you're feeling, and also where you start connecting with others. And then your top is your neocortex, and that's where you're thinking clearly. So I would watch you. I felt like I watched you, but I was reading. You would go on these walks, and then you'd come to this encounter with another person at like the Salvation Army or when you're at the Jacob Javits Center with the volunteers. And then all of a sudden you had a new, clearer thought after you had an emotional experience. And I thought, God's healing her. Like he's using her body and she's actually unknowingly responding to her body's demand for movement. I mean,
Yes.
it was really kind of remarkable to see how God was preserving you through that time.
And it's so amazing. It was movement. I think there was part of I was literally on high alert. I
Yeah,
also have a lot of energy just
yeah,
normally. But there was a sense of almost walking to try to find some sense to what had just
yes.
happened to me. And I
Which
remember,
from the brain, you
yes,
were looking
I'm looking, I'm
you
searching. I'm trying
searching.
to find some answers in my own brain. What just
Yeah,
happened?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
remember going onto Union Square, which had happened to be a communal spot for mourning in the probably months, definitely in the days and weeks after 9/11. And I'll never forget a Native American Indian who was doing a ceremonial ritual to those who died. And as you know, there are Indian reservations on Long Island. That was kind of, I thought possibly he had come up to do that. But I remember thinking, I didn't even understand what he was saying. I remember thinking, whatever he was doing, it was a beautiful gesture. And watching everybody cry, like I was crying, was healing. And yes, exactly. I had all the encounters because really it was a series of encounters in my walk. And now looking back in hindsight, those walks were uh, are just gold to me. I remember them so well because I got to see the city react and the city and mourning, and I came across so many people who were kind of doing the same thing I was, just trying to find some answers and to settle their brains after we had been completely upended and we're just in such emotional turmoil. And those are some very fond memories. And I actually I wish I could I actually deleted quite a few chapters. My book ended up being about 500 words, 500 pages, until an editor knocked it down to 180. And only just I totally understand, and I totally. But really, those walks were just gold, and to see the city react and to see what was going on was see 9 million people mourn. It was just
Yeah.
really.
Maybe I'll pitch you an idea. Write a second book as a devotional with each story as the,
That's an interesting idea.
right?
Interesting.
Taking us through, you know, the journey of mourning because you what you're describing, I'm thinking, and what you went through and the healing, the way God moved in you through encounters and movement. I mean, we need that now. And while we're still recovering from a pandemic, we're still in a pandemic, right? And as we're still facing political unrest in so many ways, and we're facing the challenges of, you know, the ground literally collapsing in places like natural disaster, human disaster, fires. Like there are so many of us that may not be in the middle of it. Like I was on Long Island, I was not in the middle of it, but I was on the periphery. And I feel like what you provide is a window into what someone might feel in the middle of a displaced trauma, and an invitation for those who are standing, watching, to respond.
Right, 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 right,
Give the hug,
right,
offer to
right.
stay in your house, put together the clothing and tag it with sizes, like there are
Because
so
Lisa, you know what? A little kindness went a very
very
long
long.
way back then.
Yes.
Offering offering a restroom
Yes.
20 years later is something I remember.
Yeah.
Letting us into their home to
Yeah.
somebody offering a glass of water. And you know what, in this day and age, when it's easy to
Yeah.
offer water or some kind words,
Yeah.
is but sometimes it seems like the hardest thing to do, especially when you're in your own funk, and you're just kind of, it's like,
Yeah.
wow, just it's such a good point that kindness can cost us nothing,
Yeah.
but kindness is something that can change. The smallest gesture can literally
Yeah.
change somebody's life.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I do believe it's a habit that has to be cultivated as much as a willingness for the Holy Spirit to make the
Right,
movement,
right, exactly. And
right?
that is an actual a prayer that I say a lot. Holy Spirit, if there's somebody around me
Yeah.
who is who is hurting,
Yeah.
and somebody I can't even tell, somebody
Yeah.
somebody who looks fine, let me know, because I'm not going to know. So
Yeah.
please work through my heart and cause me to lose any inhibitions, and ask if I can help it in any way.
Yeah.
It's just because a lot of people who are hurting don't look like they're hurting.
Mm-mm.
They look like strong characters.
Yep.
But whether it's somebody who is an obvious need or somebody who's less obvious,
Right.
it's a common prayer. Lord, just show me who needs something right now.
Yep.
And I have to say, it's one of the reasons I do love living in New York City.
Yeah.
We're surrounded by people. There's people
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yes.
And again, we're all broken. We all have needs. We all have things that hurt us and upset us throughout the day. And it's lovely being surrounded by people who all need a kindness, because everybody does.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a great note to end on, right? The challenge to be kind.
The challenge to
Yeah.
be kind.
And hospitable, generous, as we seek the Lord's work. So I'm so grateful, Christina, for your bravery in telling your story. It As somebody who has been through various traumas, it's a gift from God when we can articulate it, because there are people who have been through trauma that it's traumatizing to tell the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I see that God has gifted you to do this, and I'm grateful that you're obedient to Him in it. And I pray that there will be people who will find healing as they read your book. Uh, I imagine the person out there who is hung up on the why did God do this?
Yeah. Or yes.
Or
Yes.
allow it.
Yes,
Allow it.
exactly. That I have to admit, those aren't questions that I ask. I never
No.
really, that's not my stumbling block. I have my
Right.
own. We all have ours, right?
Right. Right.
That in particular is not a stumbling block for me, though I understand
Yeah.
that it's a stumbling block for others. All I can just say is take this, whatever stumbling block you have, and wrestle with God.
Yeah.
Lay it at His
Lay it
feet,
out
because
there.
we all have them,
Right.
based on our past experiences, based on our personality type.
Exactly.
You name it, but all of it is there
Yeah.
to throw it down at the cross.
Absolutely. And God will be there and be faithful to it. So people can find your book. Where's the best place to find it?
They're on everything from Target to Walmart to Amazon to Barnes and Nobles, Books a Million, wherever you buy things.
That is awesome. Good. And the title of the book again is Out of the Shadow of 9/11: An Inspiring Tale of Escape and Transformation. And where can they find you personally if they want to connect with you?
So I have a website, ChristinaRayStanton.com,
Okay.
and yeah, ChristinaRayStanton, that I update on different writings. I've written quite a few articles about 9/11 for the 20th anniversary, or if I have anything upcoming. But if anybody ever wants to reach out and email me, somebody actually did from England this morning, and I'm more than
Wonderful.
happy to have a conversation as well.
Excellent. Good. And would you be willing to close us in prayer before we end?
Lord, we thank you for that you are sovereign over everything. You are the God of all comfort, of all strength, Father. We need that strength nowadays, right? This is this is tough times. These are challenging times. Pandemic, with political crises, and Father, we are a world, we are a people who need you,
Yes, Lord.
and we just thank you that you have overcome the world. Thank you.
Mhm.
We thank you that we can stand on those promises, Father. And I just thank you that I don't have to do life without you, Father. And we love you so much. And thank you for our Christian community. Thank you for a community that loves and supports each other. And now, Father, I pray that we are a community that loves and supports each other. And we may be on opposite ends of the spectrum politically, but Father, you are the source of everything. It is you who we look to. It's you who are Lord, not anything of this world, Father, and that we are brothers and sisters in you, Father. And I just pray that we look to each other and offer each other kindness. And in a time period where oftentimes we have nothing to offer each other but angry words, Father. I just pray that you watch our minds, watch our hearts, and watch our mouths, Father. And I pray that just impress upon us with your Holy Spirit that we are there to comfort and provide comfort and love and acceptance, and just you put the fruits of our spirits on our hearts and on our lips, Father. Just guard our words and thoughts and deeds. And we love you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you so much for Christina for being with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. And thank you everyone for listening to the More to Be podcast. I pray that you've been filled with hope as you consider what it means to experience wholehearted breakthrough and authentic life transformation. I'd love to support you in that process as a valuable podcast community member, which you can become at patreon.com/moretobe. You will get access to exclusive downloadable resources, courses, and coaching. May you continue to pursue the life you were made for, a life that is truly aligned with God's best.